The thing about money and why more Latinas need to have it is that fact. It's the fact that when it's in our hands, we know where we want to spend it, and our spending power is incredible.
Welcome back to What Do We Do Next? I am sitting with Cristina Giovanna Olivares. She is an award-winning visibility coach and leadership advisor, and she is the founder of the Social Butterfly Gal and Hustle and Socialize, a cultural leadership and visibility platform for high-achieving Latina and women of color founders who are ready to go from best-kept secret to highly visible, highly respected leaders. For more than a decade, Cristina has been one of the most trusted voices in the Latina and women of color leadership. Her work sits at the intersection of personal brand authority, leadership psychology, cultural power, supporting women who are no longer building from survival, but from discernment, confidence, and authority. Bang! Cristina works with multi-six-figure founders through her private advisory, VIP days, intensive speaking engagements, and her podcast, Unapologetically Visible. Love that name. She helps leaders claim their voice, clarify how they want to be known, and step into rooms, conversation, and compensation to reflect who they've become. This is a great bio. I read it a little too fast earlier. Over the last decade, Cristina has coached and trained thousands of women to secure paid, land-aligned, high-revenue clients and collaborations and build personal brands that command respect. Recognized by the San Antonio Business Journal as a top executive coach, Cristina's expertise has been featured in USA Today, CNN, KSAT through 12, PRSA, NABO, Gang Gang, and Latinitas. She also serves as a founding advisor to Texas State University's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and has been a longtime mentor and advocate for emerging Latina advisors through organizations like Poderistas, the Girls Empowerment Summit, and Latinitas. Whether on stage, behind a microphone, or inside an intimate advisory room, Cristina represents a new era of Latina and women of color leadership, one where being visible, richly compensated, and deeply rooted in culture and joy is not radical, but it is the standard. So let's get right into it. I loved reading that whole bio because I think it really matters. And I love Unapologetically Visible. I love all of that. So before we really get into it, like, who lit your fire? Who made you this, like, fierce, wonderful woman that you are?
One of the most impactful persons in my life is my grandma, her name is Aurora Longoria, and she was a firecracker. She was somebody that was what we like to call a chingona. She never took no for answer. She was the life of the party. And, unfortunately, she passed almost 10 years ago, right when I was getting married. But she was the person that really just lit my fire in what a Latina represents and also what I want to embody in my life. And I'm just forever grateful that I had 25 years of my life with her, because she got to see me right at the beginning of when I launched my business. So she got to experience a little bit of that. She got to see me speak one year. And so I'm just so internally grateful for my ancestors, because they are the reason of why I'm here today.
That's amazing, and it's so important, especially at a time when sometimes our immediate family might be a little bit more disappointing or maybe not so aligned. It's a good reminder to, like, look at your ancestors and all the women and everything they did, before us to get us here, right? A little part of each of our mothers has carried down through generations to bring us to this, like, beautiful place of resistance and using your voice. And so I think that's amazing. I know it's really important for you to be unapologetically visible, and why Latina women and women of color are the backbone of leadership. So let's, explain that to me.
It's very interesting I grew up on the Rio Grande Valley, which is the South Texas border in between U.S. and Mexico. So there were a lot of leaders who did not look like me, who were not the standard of what a leader is and what could be. And when I got to college, I was really learning how to utilize my voice and what is really important to me. And I was recognizing that my little voice, because I wanted to be a reporter, so my whole entire dream in my life was to be on Good Morning America and be a reporter. What I really didn't think about was how my voice could have major impact. And I see that when I coach my clients, and the work that I do is Latinas, and specifically more so women of color, are the ones that are leading the family, that are doing all the things. They are the leaders. And so to me, creating a whole entire business and a brand around visibility for the Latina market is something that is super important to me, because of the fact that we have such economic power. And even though we have that economic power, we're not even in any standards in C-suites or just as leaders in general. And so to me, that is one of the most important things that I believe we need to have more representation on.
And I think that like Latinas and women of color, like, you know, definitely embody leadership, because as a leader, you have to, you know, carefully weigh your words. You have to consider a lot of people. You have to think about the beginning, the middle, and the end. You have to think about the consequences. And I think just being a Latina or a woman of color, that's every day. That's every moment of every day. That's the simplest decision you make. What store you go into, like who you give your money, like just going to school can be dangerous, right? And so, you know, showing up, I think, in this environment especially, right? You know, it's got to be especially terrifying. And you know, it's really important, you know, for women right now to show up, especially in this climate.
Agreed. You know, I was coaching one of my clients, and she told me flat out, I don't believe I'm a leader. And so I was like, well, let's take a step back. And so I started asking her a little bit more questions around, like, why do you not believe that you're not a leader? And a lot of it had to deal with, she was comparing herself to leadership that did not look like her. And so when we really kind of dug deep, we were recognizing that she's a single mom and she has a son. So she's making decisions every day on what schools to take him to and what to buy at the grocery store. And when we kind of like pinpointed it back, I told her, I said, those are the decisions that a leader makes. And you see this time and time again. Right now, in particular, our voices are the most radical act of visibility that we have, because of the fact that if we're not stepping up for our neighbors, and if we're not calling out the injustices that are happening in our country, who will? Right. And it's up to us, right? And I think too, one of the things that I'm seeing across the board from my clients and the women that I mentor is the fact that they're struggling right now to find their voice, to share their voice, when there is so much going on that could hurt their voices, that could hurt them, that could put them in danger. And it's about finding that balance and finding the opportunities to where women can feel safe within themselves to be able to advocate on their behalf. And, you know, that's the work that I do day in and day out.
That's incredible. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that, you know, to not feel safe. And for so many reasons, whether it's social inconveniences, losing your friends, losing support system, losing family members, to like full on losing your life, right? Yeah. You know, the stakes are like, you know, higher depending on who you are, where you are. And, you know, nothing good is ever easy, right? You know, every day we make those choices, and as white women, it's a lot easier, right? We can choose to not participate, right? You know, well, some of us can. I'm not built that way. It's, you know, I just can't. I don't know when to shut up. But, you know, I mean, you know, here we are. I'm Irish. What can I say? But I think, you know, the safety is real. I mean, I was detained by ICE in the airport last May in Miami, you know, simply for asking if they were ICE agents, and they revoked my global entry, my TSA pre-check, and I was flying back to Costa Rica the next morning. And I was terrified, because when they have my passport in their hands, suddenly you realize I'm not free at all. Right? Mm-hmm. And right. It's, you know, so it's like, it's one thing to be loud and whatever, but when you're actually putting something on the line, it like feels a little different. But I don't think that we're in a position now, like everybody's putting something on the line, because there is, you know what I mean? The line is a literal battlefield, right? It's a literal battlefield. And like being, you know, I was just at this convention, and one of the women spoke, and she said, born a woman in Iran is an act of resistance. And I thought, you know, what a powerful quote. And I thought, at this point, being born a woman anywhere in the world is an act of resistance.
Agreed.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about overwhelm, right? Because I know I was overwhelmed, but I live in Costa Rica, so I thought I'm going to use this podcast, because, I'm going to use this semblance of security I have to channel my overwhelm into something, just something, right? Just something. How should people be dealing with overwhelm and that fear right now?
We are inundated with 24 news access. I think it's insane how we can just get online and see actual murder and actual war in our face. I mean, there have been moments where I wake up and that's the first thing I see, and I question, like, why am I on social media right now? It has a lot to do as well with the boundaries that we enforce around social media, and also how we're taking care of our nervous system. A lot of the work that I do does involve nervous system regulation, because most women not only have a fear of speaking up, but their fear comes from the fact that they were told as a young person that they couldn't speak up, to not be loud and proud. You're being too much. And so one of the things that I do a lot when it comes to feeling overwhelmed is, if I'm noticing that specifically social media is making me feel a certain way, I have to have a boundary around it. I cannot get on social media. I try to do things that actually activate my nervous system. I'm super big on human design. I'm super big on like my birth chart and astrology and doing all the things. And that's a big focus that I do with all my clients is, let's look into your human design and build a strategy that allows you to have some type of nervous system regulation from the things that your human design has. And so for me, it's a lot of somatic stuff. I need to have a boundary around just being on the internet, and it's like, where can I store that energy? So maybe that's moving my body, going outside for a walk, doing something like volunteering, being a part of a community. Those are the things that I specifically like to do. And then when I look too at how am I using my voice, or if I'm feeling afraid to actually speak out, where can I take time to just take a step back for a second and kind of look and gather my thoughts before I create something from actual being a stand versus having an emotional reaction. I do feel like we live in a day and age where immediately we see something online and we come at it from an emotional reaction place. And so anytime I feel like I'm feeling overwhelmed with a specific thing, I need to take a step back and gather my thoughts and be able to actually come from a place of power versus like I'm feeling very emotional. And that's all of the boundaries and understanding how to create rubrics around how you share the things that you want to share, or actually kind of saying, I'm going to check out for a tiny second to go get regulated, and then I'm going to come back and it's going to be fire when I come back.
I love that, because I think a lot of people are like, we're not designed to get this much information, and you need to tune out some. And I'm like, that feels wildly irresponsible, because we're also not supposed to consume microplastics, but here we are. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this idea of like what we're supposed to be. We should be running around in loincloths chasing like buffalo then if we're playing that game. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like. So, but we aren't designed, it's not normal. So I think acknowledging that, but then saying, go refill your cup so that you can come back. Not just go refill your cup so you can have a better life, but that so you can come back and fight again, because that's what it's going to take. And I definitely feel that. There's times where it is too much for me on the internet, right? Like I'm just crying all the time. I can't see that stuff, man, Yeah. And, kids crying. I think about all these kids, we have, even before all of this started, 10 years ago, we had the highest amount of refugee children in the world than we've ever had in the history of mankind. And that has only gotten worse with Ukraine and everything, right? So it's like, my heart hurts all the time, right? And then that anger comes from that, because I just want to do something. I get all mama bear, right? Yeah. But being angry doesn't necessarily solve any problems, right? So, no,
exactly. And, my best friend ran for Congress in 22 and 24. And I just remember when she unfortunately lost. But I remember that night, that was election 2024. And I kid you not, I could not sleep. I could not, I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. And
Yeah.
I needed to just step away for like a day or two. And it was even more emotional for me because it was my best friend. And I saw her, go through so much scrutiny as well as a nominee. And so the ability to kind of just be like, okay, what can I do right now in the immediate? Because they want us to stay angry. They want us to feel frustrated because if that's what they're doing, then it's, us not really actually taking that action. And so immediately I was like, I need to at least take 24, 48 hours off and then be in community. That's like one of the best things that I really do believe is like when you are in community, when you are of service of others and you're getting energized by other people, it's kind of like your podcast. Like, what do we do next? Right. I remember that was the question that so many of us had. And it was when you're in community, you really feel the power of the collective and it gets you to a place where, all right, let's refill our cup. Let's get back. Let's like keep the fight. And I think that to me is something that I try to do day in and day out when I feel very, very overwhelmed.
For sure. And it's like I think we're all kind of like twerking for the algorithm by like design, right? It's not like us, but I've gone viral a couple times on Threads and like I don't want that for myself, right? I just don't know when to shut up, right? But I am not a content creator. I am not monetized. I'm just like, I have no filter, especially in the morning. And so, but when you go viral, it is completely dysregulates your whole nervous system because your phone is literally going off nonstop. And then anytime you even go remotely viral, you get flooded with bots. So then you have to go on there and you have to hide the reply, then mute them, and then block them. Because if you don't hide the reply and you just block them, all your followers and everybody else can still see their content on your thing, but you can't. And so now your followers are arguing with people. And like I mentioned this to a friend and he goes, well, you don't have to do that. And I go, no, I do. Because I'm not going to allow my followers to start getting into arguments with bots. And I said something remotely liberal or about women. And so it went viral. And so then the bots flood you. And like literally at the end of the day, I'm like shaking. Like I feel like, and I'm not really a panic attack kind of a girl, but that's how you feel. Your whole system, it's like, this sucks, right? Yeah. And then people get addicted to those feelings, right? And then they're creating content that will get, and we've seen it. Content like Tom Bilyeu, he used to have a podcast called Impact Theory, and now all of his stuff is financial collapse, it's fear-mongering. He like red-pilled himself into like oblivion, and it's like because he's looking at the algorithm, he's looking at his analytics, and he's going, oh well, people like this stuff better. No, man, like we're all being manipulated. So you gotta, it's really easy on both sides to fall into that trap, and so it's like really important to like be mindful of the content and what the reaction is that you're looking for and what you're willing to tolerate and then what you're willing to put other people through, because it is really this ripple effect of negativity that goes out there, And so I want to talk to you about money because I like talking about money because I think that women are constantly told that we shouldn't talk about money. And I know for a fact that when women make more money, our families are better, our communities are better, our employees are better, and the world is a better place. And honestly, men, if you're listening, you're done. You've ruined everything. As soon as we finish bombing the world, we're going to rebuild and you're going to be in the corner. I feel like that's where we're at. Honestly, like I'm in the men should be heard and not seen phase of my life right now, and I feel like the world is probably going to agree with us. So I think money is very empowering, and not because I'm a money-based person. Like I have like 8 of these shirts and I wear them every single day, right? Like I don't know what that makes me, but I am motivated in making money because I have 9 employees and I have other people that I support, and I feel so good about that. And so when I make money, that to me means that I am able to continue the job security for the people in my life that matter, and then I can do more things with it. And you're really big on that. So why is it so important for Latinas and women of color to make money? Number one, Latinos have the highest economic power. I believe, if I've read, there was a stat that said it was $3.2 trillion that we make collectively from just our economic power, and it's bigger than any, I think there's like 4 or 5 countries. The thing about money and why more Latinas need to have it is that fact. It's the fact that when it's in our hands, we know where we want to spend it, and our spending power is incredible. So imagine when
another Latina has, or another woman of color has that money and is pouring it back into our community, whether it's through supporting your small businesses, supporting the local markets, supporting other people that are on your team, that creates a ripple effect in our own little ecosystem that we have. And, you know, I do see it. My husband unfortunately lost his job through an unexpected layoff about 2.5 years ago. And my business sustained us for that time. And I think what is so powerful is my mom and my grandma never had that opportunity. They never had that power. And I think about it too, like the example that I want to carry to my future children, or to the other little girls that I mentor, where they're told that men are the ones that have the money and men are the ones that have that power. I think to me, it's so important to not only, you know, be money focused, but to share how much you make, to share your prices. I go into every room that I can, if it's a networking room, and I do my due diligence to say, like, hey, I want to make this amount of money this year, and I need this amount of clients, and I'm looking for this amount of referrals. One time I walked into a bank for a line of credit, and I was very kind of like shy. And then I realized that I was at the head of the table in front of like all these male bankers. And I ended up getting a $30,000 line of credit instead of a $2,000 line of credit. And it's one of those things where I think about, like, what power can we achieve, and what would the world look like when we have that power? What could it become? And I just think that for anybody who's listening, it is important to share how much you're making, what your prices are, and more importantly, to advocate for yourself, to not be afraid to ask for more. I ask for more as many times that I can get, because what's the horrible answer? No? Okay, cool. Right. And so again, I just feel like knowing that we are the block, right? Even from a political power, Latinos are the top force in our political system that have everyone's wanting that Latino vote. And so it's more than important, more than ever now, to actually really advocate for that economic power.
I love that. And so and if people are listening to this and they're like, this sounds really good and I want to work with her, what kind of people are you interested in working with?
I normally work with established founders who are in a recalibration phase. They've already have had some traction, but they're recognizing that to get to the next level, they need to really position their authority and position their messaging in a better, more recalibrated way. Maybe they have wanting to be on more stages and they're realizing that their messaging is not going to take them to those opportunities, or maybe they're just looking for next level growth. I work a lot with other coaches, with therapists, with lawyers, with any service-based business owner who's really looking to kind of expand in their personal brand. And I do feel like the most aligned clients that I work with are those who are committed to doing the work. They are those that are go-getters. They are the ones that are like, not going to take no for an answer. They feed off of my energy. Those are the best clients that I have, because they know that to see the results that they want to have, they're going to have to put in the work. And I think that a lot of the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, they are just so high achievers that are incredible and they're powerful. And so those are the people that I really attract and align with.
That's amazing. And I think it's really important. Like, this is not the time to be meek and mild. This is not the time to settle into fear. This is the time to be louder and bolder and braver than ever before, and leverage your relationships, leverage your experience, leverage your, all the work you've done in your life, and align yourself with good people, right? And
Agreed.
Especially in business, because your friends and family are usually the least supportive, typically, because they just don't understand. Like, I even have family members who are like, so you have a podcast? I'm like, no, I want to meet media company. Like, I do have a podcast now, but it's like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Like, you can't get any love from them. They just don't get it. And that's fine. But then other people respect me tremendously professionally because they have a greater understanding of what I do. But it's important to align myself. I don't expect my girlfriends to understand my business life. I have girlfriends that are in business that understand that, or coaches, right? Just like I wouldn't expect my friends to be my therapist, right? And so it's really important to align yourself with those people, because life is also all about relationships, you know, and I'm sure you open a lot of doors for people and vice versa. And I think that's where we need to be as women in the world, you know, all of us, you know, the good gringas especially, right? Maybe not the bad ones. We'll work on that, ladies. But, you know, I think it's more than ever we really need to align together. And I have to give you a shout out to your website, because I love that you are like very professional. You make a lot of money. You're doing the damn thing. And your website is like unapologetically pink, like pink. And I just love it because that's an act of resistance too, you know, and there's nothing wrong with pink. Okay, I love black, as you can see, as I'm like disappearing into my black walls. But I also have pink on my website too, not as much as you, but you know, because we get to do what we want. Okay, and nobody's gonna tell me what color my website should or shouldn't be, what's professional, what's not. I don't care. I don't care. You know,
one of the, I tell this story a lot, but it's a great branding lesson. So when I first started my company, I was 24. And I'm almost 35. And so obviously I would always walk in being like the young one in all the rooms. And I would always wear a lot of pink. And I do wear a lot of pink. But there was a moment where I felt like I wasn't going to be taken seriously. And so for a tiny sliver of I think it was like my second or third year in business, I really shifted and started doing more black, started to do colors that kind of positioned me a little bit more serious. And then I just said, fuck it. I am not going to worry about this. If people want to be in my inner circle, if they want my energy, they'll do that. And one of the things that I do at every speaking engagement is I'm huge on reggaeton, huge in like cumbias. So obviously I make everyone dance. Like I come in and I dance and I make the whole entire crowd get up, because it is that moment where we get to show bits and pieces of ourselves. It doesn't have to be so professional. It doesn't have to be that serious. And I think that was one of the reasons why my podcast is called Unapologetically Visible, is because that's the mantra that I live by. I show up, the way you see me online is exactly the way you're going to see me in person. And that's how I live my life. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, which is probably why I could not get a job in television reporting, because I was not meant for that. No one could control me.
I thought I wanted to be a school teacher. Can you imagine? They'd fire me in the second week. They'd be like, you can't say that to the kids. I'd be like, what? Anarchy is bad? No, come on, let's do this. Radicalize the youth. Let's go. I love that. And, you know, what is the idea of professionalism anyway? Like a dude in a blue suit? Like, why is that the model of professionalism? You know what I mean? Like, there are no rules, right? And, you know, I've worked my whole life, and I was in real estate finance for 13 years. And I used to have dreadlocks before social media, so nobody can cancel me. It was a long time ago. But I was closing, you know, $2 million worth of pipeline every month. I mean, every loan officer was making $20K or $30K a month in fee income because of me. And I was showing up with dreads. I was listening to Grateful Dead and Bob Marley at my desk. But I was a beast because I listened to all the reps, and I was really good, and I got all the underwriters that like me, and I was digitizing forms in the 90s.
Wow.
I was OCR scanning loan submission sheets in the 90s. Like, you know, and like writing jokes on the cover letters and stuff, you know what I mean? And so my bosses would always joke. They'd be like, we don't know what you're smoking, but don't stop because it's working. But that was when and the reason why I had dreads is because I love the idea that people would talk to me about their tax returns and their income and their situations and their $500,000 houses, and then they'd show up and they'd be like, you're Molly, you're the one, like, and I love that I was like changing people's perceptions, but I would always tell them, do you want me at the mall? Like, do you know how much time it takes to go to the mall, to get your nails done, to have your hair done? Do you want me reading industry magazines and being a beast and knowing every loan and loan program and opportunity for your buyers and your people? Or do you want me showing up with a French manicure in a suit with my hair done, because you only get one, and I'm only interested in one. So make your choice carefully, because there's 8 other shops that want me. And as soon as I owned that at a very young age, I never looked back, because if you're hiring me for my body or how I look, I'm gonna disappoint you. Period.
Agreed. Yeah, I love that.
And I don't want that job.
Wow. Exactly. Yeah, get to like call the shots. Exactly.
Yeah. Like, you want to make money, or you want something to look at, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the sooner we all claim that power back, and it frees us. Because, you know, you mentioned something earlier, too, about leadership and all the decisions we make. We have to make so many more decisions all the time, just in what we look like before we leave the house. And decision fatigue is real, right? That's why I own 7 of these exact same shirts and 4 of the same shorts I'm wearing, because I don't want to think about it, because I don't care that much, right? But most women don't get the liberty of that, because they have to decide what their kids are wearing and what school they're going to and what they're going to eat. And so we're already operating at a loss. So give yourself like the best part of yourself and look good, however that means for you, you know what I mean, but not for anybody else, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Professional. We're redefining professional.
Yes.
And it's no men. The new world order, no men. Well, listen, Christina, I am really so thrilled. We got connected on Threads when I put the call out, and I'm so glad that you have come on the show, and I got to talk to you today. I'm sure lots of women listening and men will find this valuable and interesting, and hopefully connect with you. I'll make sure that all your links are below in the show notes, your podcast, everything else. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we head out?
Yeah, thank you so much. I love that Threads is connecting so many of us. And, you know, one of the things that I did was I raised my hand. You had that call and I raised my hand, and immediately I booked the first podcast like slot that you had this week. So that's what I want to leave with. It's like, take initiative, stay committed to yourself, and be unapologetically visible at all times.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show. And for all of you tuning in, thanks for checking us out. And, you know, I had a realization this morning when I was driving around running errands. I have decided that moving forward, 2 things. I never say this at the end of the podcast, but Heartcast Media is a full-service production agency. If you're thinking about running for office, hit us up. We have political website templates. We can actually be like your machine behind the curtains. You know what I mean? And we're really committed to working with people that want to change lives. But secondly, moving forward, any woman that works with us automatically gets 10% off, period, on any of our services for the rest of the year. You're a woman-owned business, you get 10% off everything, period, whatever it is you're working on. So, you know, because we got to put our money where our mouth is. And if you're thinking about doing something, I'm a great secret weapon to have behind the scenes. So on that note, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Until the next time, be excellent to each other. And don't forget to rage against the machine. We'll see you on the next one.